Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible Believer Looks at World History. It's a survey, contains my conclusions from the point of view of a Bible believer. I don't expect you to agree with my conclusions, but I do hope that you will learn about these things and much, much more than what I'm talking about, and be conversant in world history. So let's begin. We're talking about the Jews, about the time of the Roman Empire. I like to talk about what is happening to the Jews outside of Europe during this time. Having failed in their attempts at a revolt under Bar Kokhba in 135 and again under Antonius Pius in 161, they were forbidden to enter Jerusalem except on the anniversary of its destruction, when they were allowed to come in and mourn by the destroyed wall of the temple. In Palestine, where nearly 1,000 villages and towns have been eliminated and well over 500,000 men and women have been slain, the population had dwindled to half its former number. Soon, though, the Jewish National Council, or Beth Din, a group of 71 rabbinical scholars, was established at Tiberias, promoting the teaching of their religion. After the Emperor Constantine accepted his form of Christianity, the Jews received added humiliation of being forbidden to have any association with Christians. Constantius banned rabbis, teachers in 337, and made the marriage of a Jew with a Christian woman a capital crime, or one punishable by death. The Jews were taxed so heavily that some sold their children to meet the demand. In 352, they rebelled and were brutally defeated again. Thousands of Jews were killed and enslaved. The condition of Palestinian Jews had sunk so low that in 359, Hillel II composed a calendar still in use today for all Jews to determine the dates of their festivals so they would not forget. The Emperor Julian, also known as the Apostate, lifted them up again and acknowledged their right to their faith, and even ordered the temple to be rebuilt from state funds so they could once again conduct sacrifices in obedience to Old Testament law. Therefore, about 361, Jews poured in from everywhere to Jerusalem and gave of their personal wealth to rebuild the temple. However, as the foundations were being done, Durant relates, flames burst from the ground, killing several workmen. This was repeated a second time. Although Durant insists this was probably due to their hitting a natural gas deposit, as any good atheist would, the situation and the death of Julian, the withdrawal of state funds, and the return of the old persecution sent them back into their previous condition of mourning. Many moved into Persia and reinvigorated the Babylonian Jewish population, which had continuously lived there since the Babylonian captivity nearly 1,000 years previous. In Persia, the Jews were excluded from state office, but so was anyone else who wasn't in the nobility, so the rule didn't sting as much. Taxation was less severe as well, and the government was pretty cooperative, even to recognizing the head of the Jewish exiles, the exilarch, as being an important person in the eyes of the Persian kings. Curiously, Persian law permitted polygamy, and important traveling rabbis would even advertise for temporary wives in each city. Schools of higher education arose, and Babylonian Jewish scholarship was recognized by Jews everywhere as valuable and noteworthy. The dispersion, as it is called, continued throughout the lands around the Mediterranean and Arabia, and preparing the idolatrous Arab mind for the introduction of Muhammad's belief system. In Abyssinia, or Ethiopia, eventually half the population became Jewish. All of the North African cities had large populations of Jews. In Palestine and Babylon, the scribes and the rabbis composed enormous bodies of law, commentary known as the Palestinian and Babylonian Talmud. This was justified under the argument that God had not only given the Jews a written law in the Pentateuch, or the first five books of the Bible, called the first five books of book of Moses, called Genesis, the second book of Moses, called Exodus, etc., etc., in the Holy Bible, but also an oral law, which is alleged to have been handed down from generation to generation, teacher to teacher. This was spoken of as their tradition by Jesus and roundly condemned, Matthew 15:3. But he answered and said unto them, why do you also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? Matthew 15:6. And honor not his father or mother, his mother, he shall be free. Thus have you made this commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. Mark 7:13. Making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which you have delivered, and many such like things do ye. Peter as well referred to this oral tradition, 1 Peter 1:18. For as much as you know that you are not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers. The main issue of contention between the Pharisees and Sadducees was whether or not this oral law was divine and therefore binding or not. When the Sadducees disappeared after the destruction of the temple, the Pharisee belief that the oral law was divine became the standard for all Orthodox Jews. For 1,000 years, they debated and wrote until finally the oral law was given the written form called the Mishnah, with two Gemaras as commentaries on the Mishnah. The shorter Gemara and the Mishnah made up the Palestinian Talmud, and the longer one united with the Mishnah for the Babylonian Talmud. It's of interest to note that when Peter announced his greetings from the small Jewish Christian community at Babylon, that is probably exactly where he was, not Rome, as the Roman Catholic Church has insisted. Paul does not mention him in the list of the Christians at Rome at the end of his letter to the Romans. 1 Peter 5:13. The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so doth Marcus my son. The Mishnah or oral law plus the Pentateuch or written law becomes the Torah by which the Jews lived throughout the medieval period, the Middle Ages. The rabbinical colleges at Sura and Pumbeditha provided religious and intellectual leadership for the Jews of Islam from the 7th to the 11th century, led by a group of men who assumed the title of Gaon or Excellency. The institution of leadership is called the Gaonate or the period of the Gaonim. In 762, and I may have pronounced that Gaon wrong. I apologize. I'm used to written stuff, so you might want to look it up. In 762, a rabbi who had been denied this hereditary role as Gaon, named Anan ben David, fled to Palestine and set up his own synagogue that insisted that only the written law, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, should be followed, not the Talmud. This return to the Bible was considered a heresy. His followers received the name of Karaites or Karaites, meaning followers of the text. The Crusades further isolated the Babylonian Jews from European Jewry. They finally disappeared from history when the Mongols sacked Baghdad in 1258. Long before this, however, Jews had migrated all over the world. It is said that there are over 20,000 in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, in 1165. The next power of Jewish learning and influence became Egypt, where they experienced relative freedom. There were persecutions, but little equal what the Jews faced in Europe during the time that I'm going to save for later. Next, we're going to talk about China. We have a few things to say about China, then Africa. So I hope you'll stick with me and think about these world history and study it on your own, come to your own conclusions. Thank you for listening and watching.